CCDP Spotlight Podcast, Season 2.
Welcome to the CCDP Spotlight.
Shining a light on bridging research and practice.
Welcome to the CCDP podcast et bienvenue au podcast du CCDP.
This is the podcast for the Center on Conflict Development and Peacebuilding.
From the Geneva Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies.
Where research meets practice in addressing some of the world's most pressing challenges.
The CCDP is the Graduate Institute's focal point for research in the areas of conflict analysis, peacebuilding,
and the complex relationship between security and development.
Welcome to Field Notes Live, where we bring you the voices from the field, or in this case, just returning. I'm Jennifer Thornquest, and in this short episode, I sit down with Bilal Salayme. He's a postdoc researcher at the CCDP.
So I born in Syria, and I did my thesis, my master thesis actually, and also my PhD on Syria and the dynamic of conflict and political order formation in Syria.
Recently, Bilal returned to Damascus, the place of his PhD research, to find the city both familiar and changed. It's a conversation about memory, change, and the future of Syria beyond the headlines. Here's our discussion.
But after I left Syria in 2011, I didn't go back and couldn't go back to the area under the Syrian regime or government control. I mean here Damascus, the capital, and the rest of the cities, including the city where I came from. So after the collapse of the regime, I had the chance to go back. During my field work, I got the chance to go to northern Syria, northern part of Syria, which were the areas which were outside of the state control, more under the rebel control. So for me was a return to Syria, if I may say, and I had this chance of right to return to Syria. I still have my relatives there, my friends, of course, my grandma. So it was nice at a personal level, but also it was important at professional and for academic and research goals.
Next, I asked Bilal how he found the state of Syria upon his arrival.
Well, the collapse of the Assad regime was quick and came as a surprise for many. For even the internal actors, I mean the local actors themselves, the regional and the international actors. And a surprise also for the analysts and people who were following Syria. So there were sort of combination of different feelings, even among the people who were in Syria as well. There is a hope and there are many concerns.
Bilal first discussed the history of Syria and why the fall of the Assad regime is creating such a space of hope right now.
Here we need to keep in mind that the Syrian regime, former Syrian regime, controlled Syria for more than 5 decades. So since 1970 until 2024, and even from mid-60s, we cannot speak about sort of free election or political life. So I think even since mid-50s. So for Syrians, just to get rid of this domination was very important as an opportunity for a new Syria and a new hope. And that gave many people on the ground this sense of empowerment. And this is a thing that I felt when I went back to Syria. Many people are empowered again. NGOs, many activists, many politicians are empowered and want to take a part of building this new forming Syria.
Our discussion also spoke a lot about what challenges the country is facing right now.
Well, many challenges actually, because the situation is deteriorating. We're deteriorating on different fronts, and maybe these were one of the reasons that pushed for the quick collapse of the Syrian regime. There was, of course, a concern of keeping Syrian state intact, I mean the state institution, and not having a similar scenario to what happened in Libya, where the total state collapsed. And fortunately, we didn't have this in Syria. I mean, first, the structure of the Syrian regime is somehow different from the structure of the Libya of Gaddafi. We still have sort of institutions and bureaucracy. And also the caretaking authority quickly acted and kept these institutions. So I think from the week 2 or from the week 3, employees went back to their institutions. Of course, like many changes ahead and going on, still some people trying to understand what are their positions in this new formation. But I mean, at least the state institutions kept intact. The other challenge was, and still is, to keep the formation or the unity of the Syrian territory, or what we can call the territorial integrity of Syria. That was a challenge since the start of the Syrian uprising, but later on, and still for now, because Syria was de facto divided into different conflicts and different influence zones, control zones. So we have at least 3 control zones. With this operation, with HTS, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham-led rebels took over Damascus, we now have sort of dominant group in the bigger part of Syria, which is Damascus till Idlib. But we still have also other areas under the control of other armed groups. I mean, SDF in the northeast of Syria. We have local actors in different parts, and also in the periphery or border areas. So the reuniting Syrian territory is a big challenge, and I think that was also impacting the formation of the new Syria, what we call of monopoly of violence, the security sector reform, and etc.
Bilal speaks of his both PhD thesis and master's thesis that are grounded in the Syrian conflict and based on fieldwork.
Well, I think now in Syria we are witnessing a new formation of a new Syria, or let's say the third Syrian state. So if we took Syria since its independence in mid-1940s, we can speak about the first Syrian formation. And then in 1960s, the second Syrian formation or second Syrian state that led to the domination of Assad regime till 2024. Now we are speaking about a new formation of a new Syria. We have a new political elite, our governance elite in Syria, who came from certain background. They are rebel, but with some ideologies, with a specific ideology. They came from armed background, but not formal armed background. So this is a thing that need to keep in mind and look into. But also, we are witnessing here a process of monopolization of violence that the current government is trying to do by unifying all the armed groups under the under the Ministry of Defense in Syria now. But that comes with many challenges ahead. And in my thesis, in the PhD thesis, I focused on the concept of oligopoly of violence, where I argued that Syria didn't present a case of monopoly of violence, but rather an oligopoly of violence, where we have different armed groups who are exercising their authority and empirical sovereignty over the Syrian territory. And this is what we have now, is we have a dominated actor, which HTS, under which we have different armed groups, but we have other challengers, mainly the SDF and other local armed groups. So in Syria now, the way to have a monopoly of violence is still far a bit. And what we have is an oligopoly of violence of different armed actors who are interacting with each other. The way that this monopoly of violence or monopolization of violence will be achieved, either by coercive measure or by more a process of negotiation, I would say it will be by combination of both, will impact the political and cultural identity of Syria, the social identity and the social order, and also will shape the political space for the upcoming decades of Syria, which will be forming the third Syrian state.
Bilal's current work focuses on state building, security sector reform, and the shifting dynamics of UN peace missions in an emerging multipolar world. But again, during this conversation, he stepped away from that and into his lived experience. Here's what he had to say when I asked him if he was able to visit with any family on his trip.
It was, of course, an emotional moment for me to go back to Syria. And for many as well with me, like when I was in the airplane with other Syrians who were going back. So we went to Lebanon, and from Lebanon we crossed to Syria, because at that time, still the main airport in Damascus was still not functioning. I had a friend who I met in the airplane. I didn't meet him since 2015, so that was also a surprise. And he was going back to see his relatives and his family in Syria. And he was telling me that I wish really that no one will wake me up when I arrive to the border and tell me this is a dream. Because the collapse of the Syrian regime was really a dream. It happened only in just 2 weeks. So it was, of course, a bit of a really emotional moment for me, and especially when I went back and met my cousins, my uncles, my grandma. Of course, I felt so happy because she was also so happy to see me after that 13 years. My aunt as well. And I didn't tell her, so I just knocked the door after 13 years.
You surprised her?
Well, I didn't want to do that, but when I went to the city of Homs, where she lives at that time, there was a security operation happening in that neighborhood. So they cut off all the mobile phones connections, etc., the internet. So I tried to reach out to her for 2 days before, but I couldn't. So I just knocked the door, and it was, of course, an emotional crash.
Next, Bilal reflected on the fall of the Assad regime and the resilience of the people that he met, and the quiet but persistent hope that he found in the familiar faces and family visit.
So I think now Syrians in general are trying to keep the hope against the odds, I would say, because many challenges are on the ground. And by time they are facing and they need to deal with the challenges more and more, the big hopeful moment of the collapse of the regime is I will not say decreasing, but it's coming to face the challenges and the concerns on the ground. And I think the international actors, they need to help Syrians keeping up the hope, and mainly by lifting up the sanctions. I think that is an important tool because these sanctions were imposed on the former regime, and Syrians now need to go back to normal life on different aspects, and they need to have a Syria and Syrian economy without sanctions. So I think this is crucial for the rehabilitation of Syria and Syrians in general.
Building on his expertise in studying the conflicts in Syria, I asked Bilal if he had any analysis to share with listeners. I also asked him what brought him hope. Enjoy the rest of our conversation.
The possibility of change. I mean, the possibility of change. And again, I will go back to Syria to give this example. If you ask, I would say all the analysts or people who were following Syria and the researchers, they would not give you any possibility of the scenario that the Syrian regime was going to collapse and we will have a free Syria again. But that happened all of a sudden, and no one was expecting that. So this possibility that every scenario can be possible give me the hope of possibility of change and the possibility of having better future.
To read more about Bilal's current research, click on the link in the description here in the podcast. You'll be reading about his work at the Center on Conflict Development and Peacebuilding, affiliated with the Geneva Graduate Institute. CCDP Spotlight Podcast, Season 2. Shining a light on bridging research and practice.